At the proposal venue, Mary, his first love, called my boyfriend crying, saying she accidentally broke her leg. Without a second thought, James abandoned me and went to find Mary, making me a laughingstock. He brought Mary back without my consent. It takes 100 days for bones to heal. Mary has limited mobility, so I brought her back to take care of her, James said. I took a sip of the porridge he made for Mary. He immediately took away both the bowl and pot. I spent 5 hours making this medicinal porridge for Mary. How could you be so greedy, even stealing someone else's medicine? Years of feelings died in that moment. I turned and called Noah, who had loved me for years. Noah, I accept your proposal. You can set the wedding date. Hearing my words, Noah's voice was excited and choked with emotion. Emma, I've finally waited for you. The wedding arrangements and air shipping the dress will take at least 7 days. It turned out that the wedding I couldn't get in 5 years with James only needed 7 days to prepare. I softly replied, okay, in 7 days, I'll marry you. James walked out of the guest room carrying the clay pot. Marry who? Emma, even though I proposed to you, I wouldn't rush into having a wedding so quickly. Don't go around announcing it. You'll only embarrass yourself. I looked at him and said calmly, don't worry, this time, I won't be embarrassed. That's good. James scooped a bowl of porridge from the pot and handed it to me. Mary knows you're greedy. She specially saved you a bowl. I directly refused. No need. You're right. I'm not sick. I don't need medicine. James paused, then said, still angry, I only said that earlier because I was too anxious. But often what's said in haste is the truth. He felt from his heart that I didn't deserve the porridge he spent 5 hours making. I'm not angry. I just don't want porridge anymore. After saying that, I walked to the kitchen and made myself a bowl of egg noodles. Seeing my unhappiness, James followed behind me saying, Emma, Mary has no family or friends here. She hurt her leg this time. I can't just ignore her. She'll only be staying here for 3 months. Could you be more generous for these 3 months and not make things difficult for her? Mary had only been here 1 day, and already there was no place for me in this home. If she stayed for 3 months, she'd probably become the new lady of the house. Who's really making things difficult for whom? In the past, I definitely would have argued with James and made Mary move out. But now, I've decided to give up this position as lady of the house to her. I nodded and thoughtfully suggested, the guest room is too small. Why not let her move to the master bedroom? It would be more convenient for you to take care of her. James's face lit up with joy. Emma, I actually had that thought. The guest room doesn't even have a bathroom. It's really inconvenient for Mary to stay there. I was worried you wouldn't agree, but I didn't expect you to be so understanding. James excitedly came to hug me, but I blocked him with my hand. He didn't think much of it, just said, don't worry, after Mary's leg heals, I'll immediately start planning our wedding. James acted quickly. By the time I finished my noodles and washed the bowl, he had already moved Mary and all her things to the master bedroom. Meanwhile, all my belongings were thrown outside the bedroom door. Mary can't move easily, so I helped pack her things. You'll have to pack your own. I carried my things to the guest room, took out a suitcase, and started putting in what I needed while throwing away what I didn't. But as I packed, my tears started falling uncontrollably. James used to treat me so well too. He ran all over the city in heavy snow just to buy me a bowl of my favorite osmanthus lotus root soup. When I was sick, he stayed by my side, staying up all night. We made lifelong promises together at Mount Everest. When exactly did he change? Thinking it over, I still wanted an answer before I left. I went to the master bedroom door, but found it was only slightly ajar. Just as I was about to push it open, a coquettish voice drifted out from inside. James, don't touch there, it tickles. James's voice was doting. How are you so sensitive? Fighting back the emotions churning inside me, I pushed the door open a crack. The silhouettes of James and Mary were reflected on the bathroom's frosted glass. He was actually helping Mary take a bath. Mary said in a sweet voice, James, why did you get together with Emma anyway? She's clearly not your type. It was because you left without a word back then, and she happened to look somewhat similar to you. Mary giggled flirtatiously, wrapped her arms around James's neck, and gave him a kiss. Seeing this, I turned and left immediately. So in James's heart, I was nothing but a replacement for Mary from the beginning. So it wasn't that he changed, it was that the real deal came back, and naturally there was no place for a substitute like me. I first met James at a basketball game in freshman year. He was athletic and skilled, scoring a handsome slam dunk that went straight to my heart. I've never been a shy person. Once I knew I liked him, I confessed. He just stared at me for a few seconds before agreeing. In our 5 years of dating, separating, we had our fights and arguments, but I never doubted his love for me. Today reality gave me a harsh slap in the face. Early the next morning, I sat in the living room with my suitcase, preparing to discuss breaking up with James. This house and all the furnishings were things we had bought together with both our money. Since we're separating, we definitely need to settle accounts. I waited from 6 a.m. until 9 a.m. before James finally emerged from the room looking refreshed, pushing Mary in her wheelchair. Upon seeing me, a flash of panic crossed his eyes. Mary can't move easily, so I slept on the floor in her room to take care of her. Don't overthink it. Mary also chimed in. That's right, Emma, don't misunderstand. Nothing happened between James and me. This statement had a distinct "the lady doth protest too much" feeling. I smiled and said, I didn't say I misunderstood anything. Why are you so nervous? James looked relieved. Don't you have work to do for the art exhibition? Why are you still at home today? I gestured to the sofa in front of me, indicating for him to sit down. I have something to tell you. James was about to walk over when Mary grabbed his arm, speaking in a sweet voice. James, I'm hungry. Could you make me something to eat? I'm craving your signature sweet and sour ribs. James immediately nodded, then said to me, we'll talk later. Mary's sick. She can't go hungry. With that, he dove straight into the kitchen, skillfully washing and cooking. In 5 years with James, he had never cooked a meal for me, but now he specifically took time off work to stay home and cook 3 meals a day for Mary. That's the power of a first love, I suppose. In front of Mary, my 5 years with James seemed like nothing but a joke. But fortunately, I wasn't completely without options, which made this moment feel less pathetic. Mary wore an expression of poorly concealed triumph as she asked me, Emma, have you ever tried James's sweet and sour ribs? I calmly shook my head. Mary said shyly, James once said he'd only cook ribs for me in his lifetime. But Emma, since you're James's girlfriend, you can have a few pieces later. After all, this kind of opportunity doesn't come often. I smiled and replied, sure, won't have the chance in the future anyway. Mary froze momentarily, clearly not expecting my response. She continued making a few more pointed remarks. I deflected them all effortlessly. Finally, she couldn't hold back anymore and said through gritted teeth, Emma, you're really patient. I deliberately left the door open last night to let you see everything, but I didn't expect you to act like nothing happened today. Though if you think being patient alone will let you stay by James's side, you're sadly mistaken. She suddenly reached for the glass on the table, then fell from her wheelchair, water splashing all over her. Hearing the commotion, James rushed out to check. Seeing Mary fallen, he immediately dropped his spatula and lifted her in his arms, placing her back in the wheelchair. Mary, are you okay? Mary glanced at me with red-rimmed eyes, then buried her face in James's chest, softly sobbing like someone who had suffered a great injustice. James immediately glared at me. Emma, what did you do to Mary? I let out a light laugh and commented objectively, Miss Mary's acting skills are quite impressive. It would be a waste not to become an actress. Hearing this, Mary cried even more pitifully, her shoulders shaking as she accused me. Emma, I just wanted some water. You didn't help. That's fine. But why did you deliberately move the glass away, making me fall? James yelled at me angrily. Emma, when did you become so cruel? Are you still that same Emma who used to rescue stray cats and dogs with such a loving heart? I still rescue stray cats and dogs when I see them now. When I help them, they at least know to wag their tails at me. I looked at Mary nestled in James's arms and said, but people are different. Help them, and they might turn around and bite you. James raised his hand and slapped me hard, then seemed to regret it afterwards, stammering, you. It's all because you kept pushing. Ignoring the pain in my face, I gathered my strength and slapped him back just as hard. Seeing this, Mary's lips curved in a slight smile, but she quickly hid it and said, James, Emma, please don't fight anymore. It's all my fault. I'll leave right away. I turned and slapped her face too. Mary, what's the point of all this? It's just a man. I'm letting you have him. I pulled out the account statement I had calculated last night and threw it in James's face. Check the amounts carefully. Remember to transfer the money to me. James's face darkened. Emma, what do you mean by this? I stated directly, James, we're breaking up. After saying these words, I walked straight out the door. James got up to chase after me, but Mary cried out in pain and grabbed his arm. James, my foot hurts. I took a taxi straight to my parents' house and told them about marrying Noah. They had never supported my relationship with James in the first place, and as for Noah, they approved of him completely, giving their full support. Noah was my childhood friend who grew up with me. His whole family moved abroad when we were in high school. I cried for a long time back then. Noah comforted me, saying he'd return in a few years and marry me, never to be separated again. I soon forgot this promise after all. Who would take seriously a promise made as children? Until 3 months ago when Noah returned from abroad and seriously said he wanted to fulfill his childhood promise and marry me. By then, I was already at the point of discussing marriage with James, so naturally I refused him. Who would have thought that after all the twists and turns, I would end up marrying him after all? The day before my wedding, I received a call from James. I immediately asked, "Have you checked the numbers? When will you transfer the money?" After 2 seconds of silence, James's voice came through. "Emma, when are you coming back? I miss you." I laughed coldly. "James, didn't you understand what I said that day? We're broken up. I'm not coming back. You just need to transfer the money now and we'll be done." Hearing the determination in my voice, James said, "There are a few items in your statement that I don't quite understand. I've booked a private room at the Gray Hotel for 8 p.m. tonight. Let's discuss it in person." "Fine." After hanging up James's call, I called Noah and asked him to accompany me tonight. That way I wouldn't have to worry even if James tried anything. At 8 p.m., Noah and I arrived at the Gray Hotel on time. I went upstairs and found the private room number James had given me. When I pushed open the door, it was completely dark. Just as I thought I had the wrong room and was about to leave, the lights suddenly came on. In the middle of the room was a large heart-shaped arrangement of red roses. James was kneeling before me with the ring he hadn't managed to give me last time, making a passionate declaration. "Emma, I was wrong before. These past few days without you made me realize how important you are to me. Will you marry me?" James's friends in the room were all chanting, "Marry him! Marry him!" If this had happened a week ago, if James had proposed to me like this, I definitely would have agreed to marry him without hesitation. But after knowing everything, if I still agreed to marry him, I would truly be a fool. Just as I was about to refuse, my hand was grabbed. It was Noah, who had parked the car and come up. His dark eyes looked at me nervously. I gave him a reassuring smile, gripped his hand back, and raised our intertwined fingers in front of James. James exploded instantly, standing up from the ground to question me. "Emma, what do you mean by this?" I smiled and said, "Is my ring not sparkly enough? Can't you tell from this that Noah and I are together now?" James's face turned ugly enough to eat someone as he shouted at me, "Have you been secretly with him behind my back all along? I knew you must have been attracted to his money. Emma, you gold-digging woman, you really disgust me." His accusations caused his friends to start whispering about me. I raised my hand and slapped James hard across the face. "James, stop trying to shift the blame. You're the one who's been using me as Mary's replacement all along. You're the disgusting one." This slap seemed to bring James to his senses somewhat. "You knew? I heard everything you and Mary said that night, saw everything you did. I know it all." Panic showed on James's face like never before. "Emma, let me explain. Nothing happened between Mary and me," I said coldly. "Whatever happened or didn't happen doesn't matter to me anymore. I'm just here today to settle accounts and draw a clear line." James reached out to grab my arm but was blocked by Noah. "Emma is my fiancé now. Please show some respect." James's eyes widened as he looked at me. "Fiancé?" I replied directly, "That's right. I've agreed to marry Noah. Tomorrow is our wedding." James sputtered incoherently, "No, I don't agree. If you marry him, what about me?" "James, I'll tell you one last time, neither my breaking up with you nor my marrying Noah requires your agreement. Since you clearly didn't come here to settle accounts today, just wait for the lawyer's letter." With those words, I pulled Noah toward the exit. But unexpectedly, when the elevator doors opened, Mary was inside. She wheeled her chair straight to James's side, clutching his sleeve with tears in her eyes. "James, didn't you say you would take care of me forever?" Mary felt wronged. She had finally driven Emma away and thought everything would surely belong to her now. But James suddenly threw her out, clothes and all. James shoved Mary away, yelling at her, "I'm sick of you treating me like a slave, always demanding food and bathroom help. I've had enough. Stop bothering me." Noah and I entered the elevator. James threw off Mary's arm and tried to chase after us, but was too late, blocked off as the elevator doors closed. There are no dutiful children at a long sickbed. James was somewhat of a male chauvinist to begin with. I imagine after a week of waiting on her hand and foot for meals and bathroom needs, his patience and novelty with Mary had worn completely thin. Leaving the hotel, Noah drove me home. When we arrived, I didn't rush to get out of the car, but turned to ask him, "Noah, should we postpone our wedding?" The smile instantly disappeared from Noah's face as he fired off 3 questions. "Emma, do you regret it? Because of James? Do you want to marry him?" I shook my head. "No, I'm afraid you'll regret it later. Marriage isn't a game, especially since I agreed to your proposal partly out of anger." "That's really not fair fair to you. I think we should take some time to get to know each other better. Once we're sure we're compatible, it won't be too late to get married then. After all, James's example was right there. He had enthusiastically brought Mary home to care for her, but grew tired and annoyed in less than a week. If Noah and I got married and then found we weren't compatible, divorce would be troublesome. Emma, I've known you since you could barely walk. When you wet your pants as a kid, I helped change them. When you got your first period, I bought you pads. When you broke a classmate's limited edition toy and were afraid to tell your parents, I used my New Year's money. I covered his mouth with my hand. Stop. Why do you still remember such embarrassing things? Noah looked at me with smiling eyes and kissed my palm. Emma, we've known each other for 25 years now. Do you still think we need more time to get to know each other? I hadn't expected him to suddenly kiss me. My face turned red and my palm felt hot. I lowered my eyes, not daring to look at him. But we haven't seen each other for 7 years. Are you sure you want to marry the current me? What if you find I'm different from before and regret it? Noah seriously told me, Emma, no matter how you change, in my eyes you're still you, the one and only Emma, the person I love most. I hadn't expected him to become so smooth with words during his years abroad. I remembered he used to be quite quiet, blushing at the slightest teasing. Suddenly feeling playful, I decided to tease him. What if I find you're different from before and don't want to marry you? Noah's eyes grew deeper, filled with various emotions. I instinctively felt him become tense. Could it be you're really hiding something from me? After a long while, he finally said solemnly, I won't let that possibility happen. Emma, whatever you like, that's what I'll be. He'll love me no matter how I change, and he'll become whatever I like. I have to admit, Noah's words were impeccable and impossible to refuse. To ease his tension, I playfully ruffled his hair. Then I'll wait at home for you to come marry me tomorrow. Only then did Noah relax. He leaned in to place a gentle kiss on my forehead, then moved down to cover my lips. As I was lost in his kissing technique, he whispered in my ear, I love you. That kiss definitely made my heart flutter. I got out of the car in a daze and went home to be a bride-to-be. Early the next morning, the makeup team knocked on my door and dug me out of my blanket. Makeup, hairstyling, changing clothes. After 2 full hours of preparation, when I saw myself in the wedding dress in the mirror, I finally felt like I was really getting married today. Noah came to pick up the bride wearing a black suit, looking more handsome than any male celebrity. In the solemn church, the priest recited the wedding vows. Do you, Noah, take Emma to be your lawfully wedded wife, to live together in holy matrimony, to love her, comfort her, honor and keep her, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, keeping yourself only unto her, for as long as you both shall live? Noah looked at me with utmost sincerity and said, I do. The priest turned and asked me the same question. Just as I was about to say I do, hurried footsteps came from outside, and James appeared before me, panting as he shouted, I object. Emma, don't marry him. The long-awaited wedding was interrupted. Noah's face turned ashen as he strode forward and grabbed James's collar, veins bulging on the back of his hand. Mr. Smith, my patience has limits. If you harass my wife again, don't blame me for being impolite. James stared at him fearlessly. I just need 10 minutes. If after 10 minutes Emma still doesn't want to leave with me, I'll never bother her again. Impossible, not even 1 minute. Noah moved to drag James out of the church. James resisted, and the two men started struggling, but Noah quickly gained the upper hand, twisting James's arm and pinning him to the ground. Seeing he couldn't win physically, James resorted to verbal attacks. Noah, you know very well Emma doesn't love you. She'll definitely leave with me. That's why you won't even give me 10 minutes. James spoke with such confidence. I really don't know where he got the nerve to think I would abandon Noah at our wedding to leave with him. I wanted to hear what he could possibly say. I patted Noah's shoulder, signaling him to release James. Noah turned to look at me, his eyes full of panic, as if I might really leave. I gave him a bright smile. Don't worry, I'm your bride. Nothing he says today can change that. Hearing my words, Noah relaxed slightly, reluctantly letting James go. Free from Noah's restraint, James got up from the ground. His hair was disheveled, and his face had a bruise from Noah's punch. He looked completely disheveled. He immediately tried to take my hand, but I stepped back to avoid him. He withdrew his hand dejectedly and said, Emma, you look so beautiful in your wedding dress. I glanced at the time and said, 9 minutes left. If you came today just to say I look beautiful, you can leave now. Emma, I admit at first I was using you as Mary's replacement, but after 5 years together, I had already fallen in love with you. James pulled a red ribbon from his pocket and placed it in my hand. I instinctively turned it over to read both sides. James, Emma were here. James loves Emma forever and ever. James and I had left a ribbon like this when we climbed Mount Everest. That was when James and I were most in love. He said he wanted to declare our love from the top of the world, so we climbed Mount Everest together and left a ribbon as proof of our love. James looked at me with deep feeling and said, Emma, I didn't understand my own feelings before, but now I'm very clear you're the one I love. Please give me a chance to make amends. I promise I'll love you with my life from now on. I looked at him with mockery in my voice. James, you think a ribbon can move me? Just then, a delivery man in yellow clothes burst into the wedding venue, bringing a cup of osmanthus lotus root soup to James. James held out the soup to me. Emma, I'm willing to buy you osmanthus lotus root soup for the rest of your life. I took the soup from James's hands. His face lit up with joy. Emma, you forgive. Before he could finish speaking, he watched me give the soup to a child in the audience. Then I tied the red ribbon that symbolized our past love around a dog's neck. After doing all this, I turned back to look at James, who stood frozen in place, and asked, Is this all you've got? A walk down memory lane? Unfortunately, your love is too cheap for me now. I used to be moved enough to date him just because he ran all over the city to buy me a cup of osmanthus lotus root soup. But now I can order delivery myself. Having it pass through his hands doesn't make it taste any better. I checked the time and told him, 10 minutes are up. James, please leave and don't appear in front of me again in the future. All the cards James played had been rejected by me. The confidence from earlier disappeared from his face. Like a lost soul, he suddenly fell to his knees before me, crying and saying, Emma, I really know I was wrong. We were together for 5 years. Why can't you forgive me just this once? Once unfaithful, never trust again. When you got in bed with Mary, you should have expected this outcome. James seemed to grab onto a final lifeline, urgently explaining, That night I didn't do anything with Mary. I pushed her away at the last moment. Really, I just slept on the floor in her room that night. Does not going all the way mean it wasn't cheating? You bathed her, held her, kissed her in my eyes. That's no different from going all the way. James, I've said everything I needed to say. Please stop bothering me in the future. I turned to look at the priest, telling him to continue with the wedding. The priest once again recited the wedding vows to me. In front of everyone, I firmly said, I do. Hearing this, James collapsed to the ground as if his spine had been pulled out. After the wedding, Noah and I flew to the Maldives for our honeymoon. During this time, through my lawyer's lawsuit, James finally transferred me half the money for the house purchase and renovations. I also saw an interesting piece of news in the social media. It turned out Mary's leg wasn't broken from falling while hiking as she claimed, but was broken by the wife of a man she was having an affair with after being caught as the mistress. I immediately played the Good Samaritan and forwarded this news to James. Just thinking about them fighting like dogs brings me joy. A pair of well-defined hands wrapped around my waist as Noah rested his chin on my shoulder. What are you looking at? You seem so happy. I showed him my phone, but he barely glanced at it before taking my phone and blocking all information about James. No more contact with him. I deliberately teased him. We can still be friends even after breaking up. Noah, you're such a petty man. Noah swept me up in his arms and threw me on the bed, then pressed down on top of me, saying in a muffled voice, You can be friends with anyone else, but not him. Hearing the jealousy and sadness in his voice, I stopped teasing him and hugged him tight, saying, Noah, I'm married to you now. Can't you be more confident? With you, I never have confidence. So Emma, never leave me. Okay, I won't leave you. Over this month, my relationship with Noah grew by leaps and bounds. The hotel held a basketball tournament for guests. Watching Noah's athletic grace on the basketball court brought my memories back 7 years. In high school, Noah loved playing basketball. I would always sit on the sidelines holding his clothes, cheering him on. From that time on, I had secretly given him my heart. Later, when he left with his parents, I was angry with him and gradually lost contact, eventually forgetting about him. Looking back now, I realized that when I fell for James playing basketball in college at first sight, it was only because I saw Noah's shadow in him. So not only was James using me as a replacement, I had unconsciously been using him as Noah's replacement too. After realizing this, I didn't tell Noah, no need to make him too smug about it. When our honeymoon ended, Noah and I took a flight home, but unexpectedly, we ran into James again outside our house. He looked unkempt with an unshaven beard, appearing completely haggard. The moment he saw me, his eyes lit up and he immediately rushed over. Emma, I've been waiting here for half a month. Finally I see you. I had no patience left for James's repeated harassment and didn't want to deal with him. Noah protected me as we tried to enter the house, but James directly blocked the doorway. I scolded him coldly, James, what else do you want? Didn't I tell you not to harass me anymore? James said urgently, Emma, you've been deceived by Noah. Everything was planned by him. He deliberately had Mary find me to destroy our relationship. He also misled misled me before, making me think you had an inappropriate relationship with him, which is why I treated you that way. I instinctively looked up at Noah. Noah, is what he's saying true? Noah's eyes flashed with guilt and remorse, like a child who had done something wrong, lowering his head to admit it. Emma, I did do those things, but I don't regret it. James's face brightened when he heard this, excitedly saying, Emma, he admitted it. Everything was his scheme. He's just a despicable person. Emma, hurry and divorce him. Come back to me. I held Noah's hand and said to James, I won't divorce him. Stop wasting your energy. Why? After he did such things, how can you forgive him? Because I love him. So James, stop trying. I'm not someone who goes back to old relationships, and you weren't even a good one to begin with. James stood there completely dumbfounded. After saying this, I pulled Noah inside and asked him, so this was what you were afraid I'd find out about before? Noah looked at me with reddened eyes. Emma, I really wasn't honorable in this matter. You can hit me or scold me if you want, but I absolutely won't divorce you. I stood on tiptoes to kiss his forehead. Silly, are you really this unsure about me? I wouldn't divorce you over something like this. Noah held me tight in his arms. Emma, I love you. Noah, I love you too. Much later, I heard from others that James developed stomach cancer from drinking heavily every day. Mary also disappeared after having her face slashed by another wife when she was caught being a mistress again. While I look at our lovely child and Noah busy in the kitchen, my heart overflows with happiness and sweetness.